What's up, everybody? I got a Crown Victoria video for you here today. We've got the 92 Vic pulled into the shop, and I washed it all up nice. Ooh, look at it. Not too bad. Anyway, the reason this is pulled into the shop is because we've come to a dilemma with the old lady's car. She's slipping pretty hard in third gear, which is a real common problem for these guys. So what we're about to do here, I believe I've got my plans where I'm going to shuffle all my parts and pieces around. We're going to get this car prepped to pull the transmission out of it, because it seems to be in good shape as the fluid's not all burnt and stuff. So we're going to work on pulling that trans out so it can go into her car, because there's no telling how much longer it's going to last before there is no third gear, and then it's probably not going to like the 2 to overdrive jump very much. So we're going to do that, so that's in her car soon, and then we'll take the transmission out of her car, and I think that would make a special cool video to try to rebuild on it, because I've never been in an automatic transmission before. Should be able to rebuild one no problem. I mean, never opened one up before, but let's see what could go wrong. And the rebuild kits are like 120 bucks, so we're going to go that route. But anyway, right here, right now, we're just going to drain the oil out of this engine and fill it up with new oil, Parts Master 10W30, on account of that's the cheapest oil that they had there, which is essential for the purposes of it. Start going through this thing and see if it isn't rebuildable, where we couldn't have a solid extra 4.6 laying around for her car. And we're changing the oil in it right now because it's full of coolant. Yeah, that's not ideal conditions for your oil. So we're swapping that out. We'll set a battery on the frame rail, spin it over a bunch of times, try to get it all over everything, so while it's waiting we don't have quite so much water in there rusting everything apart. First step, jack up your car. And on the jack stands, now let's find out. Well, we already know how the oil looks, but let's look at it. I know oil and water don't like to mix, so I think we're going to see water first and then oil. Ooh. Well, it looks like they mixed fine. Ooh. Yeah, this engine is probably fine. Okay, now we've spun everything around and pumped the good oil all around a little bit. The oil on the stick still doesn't look too bad. You see there's a little water in it, but it's considerably better. So we sprayed the bolts on our drive shaft down there to the differential, sprayed on a bunch of these exhaust flanges, because we're going to be doing something with the exhaust, deleting on the mufflers, keeping this HX pipe whatever section in the middle when it goes race car 351 mode. Sprayed on all our brackets on the side of our transmission here, a bunch of the mounting bolts and stuff like that. So now where we're going to go, we'll pull the drive shaft out and we'll start tearing down some of the stuff on the top of the motor, because I'm thinking the easiest way to pull that transmission out is going to be to take the engine and trans together and come out the front of the car, especially since there is no front of the car. You know, we just take that, set it to the side. So yeah, now we'll do that. looks like as far as all my wiring harness on the 4.6 goes here, I should be able to leave most of it hooked up. And here at this fuse box, I'm taking these two power leads loose, and then it looks like most of my wire harness will stay attached to the motor. And then I just got to come back, unhook the heater hoses here. On the other side, we've got our fuel lines coming off of this rail. The lines need to disconnect, or I need to take the rail off or something to get us loose over there. And then there's just a few more things, and we could undo motor mounts, take the tranny loose from the tranny bar, and now we're gonna get under here while all the rusty bolts are soaking. At least there's no catalytic converters in the way. We're going to get under here and do a service on this transmission before we pull it and the engine out the car. We're going to clean up around this edge of this pan really good to avoid getting dirty fellers in the pan, and we're going to pull all the bolts out, take this pan down from one end here. We'll get our drain pan underneath that end and try to catch some of the fluid that falls out before it just spills everywhere, because that's usually what happens when you do a transmission fluid change. Alright, now that we've cleaned up around the edge of our pan, we're going to start loosening all these 10mm bolts. We'll break them all loose at the same time, one after another, and then we'll come towards the end we'd like the fluid to dump down from, and we'll start loosening those slightly more than the rest of them and try to get the pan to tiltulate. And when it does, fluid will start just going everywhere, and we'll probably catch none of it. Check that out. So this is what it looks like under the pan. That's pretty complicated valve. Here's our new filter. See what that looks like from the bottom side. And it looks like, well, make me have to go swimming for it. It looks like we may have a different type of filter. Well, that's fine, I was wanting to go back by. You just go in there then. I was wanting to go back by O'Reilly's anyway, because a guy could use a couple of those, the big rectangular, thin drip pans. Yeah. Alright. Now, we're back from the O'Reilly's after work the next day, and we got the correct filter for our transmission. So now we're gonna pull the couple bolts back out, drop the pan back down, pop the new filter in place. Here's a helpful tip I learned the first time I changed the filter in one of these transmissions. You see that grommet there, rubber guy? It's like a red O-ring type of situation. If you look at the other filter that's got the kitty litter all over it, you'll notice it doesn't have one. The reason for that is because it's still up there in the hole. over there. So before I go sticking this in place, I'll take one of my little picks and pry that guy out. Otherwise, it won't fit. Now I've got one of my little picky tools that's got the hooky type on the end. You might be able to, you can kind of see it. We'll get that hook up there on the top side of this thing, and it's really hard and brittle and in place and hard to get out. So if you get this hook like up above and behind the seal and work it in there, you can kind of like break its seal from where it is in the hole, and it'll start sliding down. If you just kind of grab the top and pull down, it's almost impossible to get it to break loose from where it's at. So we get up in and behind. Ooh, almost. Nope, maybe. Ooh, yeah, see? There you go. It's down there now. Yep, that's gone. Yeah, now we're ready to pop the new. Alright, now we're going to clean up around the edge of the pan really well, and then apply the new gasket with a thin layer of the gasket sealer. And then we're going to do something that's probably controversial, but you see this fluid that's in the bottom of the pan? She got just a little bit of the, yeah, you can see it really well on camera. It looks like a little bit of the friction materials rolling around in there. We're just gonna leave that there and do our best to clean up and not get anything in the pan, and just put it back like that and not wash all that friction material out. We're even gonna go as far as to add some more friction material to float around in there with it. Even though it looks like this thing isn't burning fluid and not slipping as far as we know, not like we've ever really driven it much, but it doesn't smell burn, it doesn't look like it's hurting anything yet. But this is an old automatic transmission. This thing has like 30 years of runtime on it. The friction plates inside the transmission wear over time, and all their friction material that's floating around in here is aiding in those plates gripping and holding together, and the trans not doing like the other one is doing and slipping in gears and making the car shudder and shake and just giving you a bad time. So in my experience, it seems like if you wash all this stuff out, you really heighten your chances of having slippage occur after you put the new fluid. I see a lot of differing opinions on the internet. A lot of people are all about flushing old automatics. A lot of people are not about it. I'm one of the people that's not about it. If it's a really old automatic transmission, lots of miles on it, I wouldn't flush it all out. I'd drop the pan, change all the fluid that you drain out when you do that, change the filter, and then put it back. And maybe add a bottle of the stop slip. Now we've got all our bolts Loctited and snug back up. And those things torque down to like 9 to 11 foot-pounds. So unless you have an inch-pound torque wrench, you pretty much snug them up pretty good. Don't tighten them too much. Damn sure don't over-tighten them, because then you'll put dents in the pan and it'll leak really bad. Yep. Had to break out the old hydraulic wrench back here on these rusty, whatever these bolts are. The drive shaft to the differential bolts. Those things have been in there a really long time and don't want to come out. So it's either going to break loose or we're going to break the wrench. Woohoo! It started to turn. That poor little wrench. Now we've got our drive shaft removed and the yoke all sealed up to prevent scratches and damage and dirt getting all on it. And then, now that I've got my transmission pan all securely mounted back into place with a new filter, I found out that that's probably going to have to come back off again. Actually, definitely. Because this car is a 92 Crown Vic and it has an AODE transmission in it. Our 97 Vic out there has a 4R70W, which are very similar, except the 4R70W has a wider ratio from first to fourth than this one does, and the TCC solenoid, which is a torque converter lockup solenoid, I believe, those are different. This is a low impedance and the 97 is a high impedance solenoid, so those have to be swapped. I believe they're right under the pan, hopefully, maybe. And I've got to figure out further, because that's all I know so far, but there's probably something else that needs to be swapped too. But as of now, I know that the TCC solenoid guy needs to come out of the 97 transmission and go into this transmission before it'll work in that car. Otherwise, that car's computer and electronics, I think, will just tear something up. Yeah. So anyway, let's move forward with removing our alternator and getting ready to pull this whole assembly out of here, because we don't have lift points like we do on the 302 over here. So we need to pull the alternator, use these 2 bolts in the front, and then hopefully I can get to some bolts on the back side of the head for the other 2 hooks on my leveler. And yeah, then we'll figure out how to get the engine mounts loose. This side looks pretty straightforward. The other side, we need to pull the AC compressor, and then we might be able to see it. Alright. Now I got my 2 front points to hook my guy to. I need the other 2 in the back, on the back sides of these heads. This whole windshield wiper tray is in the way, which I thought was just going to be a nightmare. But if you'll see, there's 6 of these little 8mm headed bolts all up in. There's like 1, 2, 3, and the other 3 are right up over there. And when you take those out, this whole assembly lifts up, which is cool because I thought I was going to have to pop these windshield wiper arms off, and I thought that stuff was mounted to the car. Whew. So that's nice and easy. You can leave the windshield wiper motor mounted to this, and it looks like you actually take those 6 bolts out to flip over and get to the windshield wiper motor if you ever needed to replace it. So cool. Now I can just unplug the wiper motor, and that part is free from the car. And that should give me, oh yeah, a whole lot more access to the back side of the cylinder head where we want to hook our other 2 chains to. Because you can lift off the intake manifolds, but these things leak enough without lifting the whole engine transmission off of them. Now we've removed all the stuff out of the way to get clear to a mounting bolt on the top center side of the head on both sides. So we got 1, 2, and 3 and 4 mounting places for our 4-point lifty levely guy. Now about these motor mounts. So here on the driver, down under this manifold, there's a motor mount that appears to be like a flat rectangle guy. There's a bolt through here and a bolt through here. It looks like those need to be removed this way under the car, being pulled out that way. Fairly straightforward on that side. Over here, I've got the AC compressor removed. Back here, it looks like there's this bolt here, which looks similar to the mount on the other side, except this bolt's coming out towards the front instead of the back like the other side. And that's where the similarities end. The rest of this, out of here with that serpentine? The rest of this mount looks really strange. There's not a bolt through up here, which I don't see why not. I could get to it fine. And then there's this weird swoopy guy and a bolt there. So maybe it's this bolt and that one to separate the engine side of the mount from the car side of the mount. So after we get that figured out and those loose, then I can pull the 2 bolts out of the transmission on its mount, and we should be about ready to start lifting it up. Besides my fuel lines right here, I got to disconnect the quick connect guys here, and then that should be everything free. Most all that wiring harness is going to ride with the motor. It all plugged in right here. See these 2 big giant plugs? That's most the entire harness for the motor. So all that'll stay with it. Even this wire here, I need to separate this ground from the other grounds, and then the positive negative lead, it'll ride with the motor. So now I've got motor mounts loose left and right side of the motor, and I pulled the 2 bolts that hold the trans to the cross member back there. So we should all be free, and I disconnected my my shift linkage from the side of the transmission down there. So everything's free but these fuel lines, and you'll see right here we have this quick connect style. They call them quick disconnects, but yeah, right, it's a quick connect style of guy that pops in there. I bought the wrong size tool to fit up in there. See this guy? This has the size of our fuel line on it, but these are like a lot bigger right here at these connectors, so I need a bigger guy than this. So here's what I did. You see these clippy guys? This comes over and like hooks onto the pipe and is supposed to prevent the thing from being unhooked over time. Well, I repurposed the unhooker and I repurposed the guy that holds it together and made it the guy that separates it. See, I whittled away at both ends where it hooked up on the clamp there and made it look like that. And then I could pop this guy on there like so, and it'll slide in and push in and disconnect that you got like a spring that wraps around here on this quick connecty guy, and you've got to make that spring widen out and move out of the way of this lip here. So yeah, that's how I whittled one of these things down and made it a new tool. And now I can slide that in here. It gets up underneath the guy, and I might even be able to do it with one hand. Probably not though. And now we get to test the tensile strength of everything we forgot to unhook. I believe we're all loose from the car, but you know how that goes. Sometimes you're not. Nope. Are you cabled in? There's a throttle cable. There's always something. I saw that earlier too and forgot all about it. Now we pulled the 8mm bolt and got the throttle cable loose. Throttle cables are strong, guys. That's probably the last thing. Now that we've got it all lifted up and removed from the car, we'll gently come back and set it down in a spot on the floor and figure our way to prop it up all safe like where it doesn't crush itself. So that's going to be a good stopping point for this video here. In the next video, we'll get this all set down and separate the tranny from the modi, and then we'll go over all the neat stuff we need to do to this AODE from a 92 to make it go in place of a 4R70W in a 97. Pretty simple. They're both mainly the same. You got to change a few sensies though, you'll burn it up. Anyway, thanks for watching. It's been wonderful. I've had a lot of fun. Never done this before. OG.